Greetings and welcome to another Lessons with Odin. On this episode, I will be showing you how to make this sparkly, spiky, pointy thing. I was kind of thinking of like dragons or something, and I don't know, I wanted to do a little asymmetrical little doohickey. And this is what I came up with. This is using the beads that I got from Scarabeads. I made one other tutorial using the beads that I got from there. If you want to check that out, there'll be a card somewhere along the corner thingy. As well as an unboxing, which I highly recommend you check out because they got some lovely finishes that I don't see anywhere else. But with those beads, this is what I came up with. Now you don't have to make the full thingy. You can take parts of this and techniques, use different bead shapes, what have you, but this is what I came up with. Feel free to take what you want, make your own projects, and do what you will. And if you make something from this tutorial, be sure to share pictures of it over on our Discord group, where we talk about a bunch of beady things. It's a lovely little community where we share our projects and talk about life itself. So if you want to join our community, check it out in the description down below. And I hope to see you there. So for this project, you will need an already bezeled 25mm cabochon. Now, there's a little bit more caveats to this peyote stitch. There are an extra row with some additional tricks. Basically, I've used 2 colors of delicas. You don't have to do that, but it will be easier to mark off where you are starting from if you use 2 different colors. But with this one, it is going to be 4 rows of peyote instead of your typical 3. Delica rows, 2 rows of size 15s. Now, to get that little setup right there, there's a couple of ways of doing it. So, I have tutorials on the 2 needle technique, and I think I have a video on the 1 needle technique, but the quote-unquote traditional. But if you're using the 2 needle, this one's really easy to set up. All you need to do is you add your 2 beads on your 2 needles, join together with color B, and keep on going like that. There's nothing unusual. Then with the traditional technique, once you are ready to add your 3rd row, you're going to add a total of 62 beads. You're going to add it A, B, A, B, A, B, all the way around. 31 of A, 31 of B, alternating. When you are ready to add your 3rd row, you want to come out of color B, if whatever color that you only want the single row. So I'm coming out of color B, I'm adding 1 color A, skipping over and passing through the next color B, so that I have my 2 rows. I'm coming out of color A, add 1 B, jump over to the next B, like so. You do that all the way around, end up coming out of an A, and then on the back side from where you started, all you're going to do is add 2 size 15 rows on the back to cinch that together. Then on the front side, since this cabochon, this is one of the check glass cabochons, there's 25mm, these ones are not as flat like a Rivoli. It doesn't have a sharp corner to where it ends. It's more rounded and beveled, so it's thicker. So you need an extra row. I'm going to add an extra row of delicas in between the color A's. And it's just adding an extra row of peyote before adding on the 2 size 15s there. So that is how you're going to set up for this bezel. You are also going to need 15 dagger beads, 1 10mm round. I'm using one of these cotton pearls that I got from Scarabeads. You will need 19 or so 3mm bicones or whatever. I used bicones for the first part of the wrap around that bezel, and then I used it as accent beads on the bottom of the fringe. You can use that or use something else over there. But regardless, I used about 19. You could use more or less depending on how many fringy bits you want. And I used about 20 dragon scale beads as the accents. I know you guys were looking for some more things to do with dragon scales. Well, here you are. You will also need the same size 15s you used to create the bezel. And of course, your needle and thread. I'm using my 1G, as well as a size 12 needle. And with all that being said, let us get started. So, we're going to get a little funky in here first. You want to come out on your bezel from one of the color Bs, the single row that you created. You're going to add 1 dagger bead and 3 size 15s. You're going to skip over the next color B and go through that one. The one after that. This makes the dagger bead go off kilter, which is what you want. Once again, a dagger bead and 3 size 15s. Skip over the next color B, go through the following. And repeat that until you have 6 daggers. Don't worry too much about the floppiness, we're going to reinforce that later. Just try to keep your thread tension tight as possible. It's not going to be perfect, so do this until you have 6 dagger beads. Alright, so that's what you've got, a little mohawk thingy. Now we're going to change it up and get a little more funky. So, my thread is coming out of the color Bs. All I'm going to do is pass through the next row, the very back row on our bezel of delicas. Next, I'm going to add a size 15, a dragon scale, a size 15. If yours have 2 colors on them, make sure you line it up the way you want it to whatever direction it's facing. I obviously want my purpley red facing outward because it matches colors. So, my thread is coming out of this bead in the back of the bezel. We just want to jump forward to the next row and pass through here, so that our dragon scale is flopping around and standing up. Next, we want to turn our thread, so if I push the dragon scale back, you see that my thread is coming out of this delica. What I want to do is go back through the delica that we started from, and I'm going to travel through the back side, so I am coming out of this delica bead here. I'm going to pick up the first row of size 15s, pick up the delica right next door, from that size 15, from this size 15 over to the next delica diagonally above it, and do the same thing. 15, dragon scale, 15, thread is coming out of the very last delica, the last row delica, pass through the one next over, turn your thread by passing through the delica that we started from. From there, pick up a size 15, and set up for the next dragon scale by going through the delica bead diagonally above the previous 15. Do that until you have 5 dragon scales attached. So that is what you end up with. The mohawk is shrinking, so now we are just going to basically do the same thing that we did with the daggers, but with bicones. So my thread is coming out of the second delica bead that we started from when we added the last dragon scale. Instead of going through the size 15 seed bead, we're just going to go through the color B right underneath. Then you're going to add a 15, a bicone, a 15. Skip over the next color B and pass through the one after that, like that, and do that 2 more times. Alright, so before I moved on to the next steps, I did a bit of reinforcing, and that's pretty easy to do. You're just going to go through the color B that is in front of one of the daggers, go up the dagger, down, through the color B, dagger, down, color B, and so forth until you're all the way there. The dragon scales on the other side don't really need reinforcing, but if you feel like it, go for it. And then I reinforced the crystals on the other side. You can either travel all the way around using the peyote stitch to get to your destinations, or you can just add a new thread. But for the next step, regardless, you are going to want to end up coming out of the color B that is in front of the dagger. Not the one at the dagger, but the one in front of it. And we're just going to do the same exact dragon scale steps. 15, dragon scale 15. Going to turn our thread. I am then going to go next over to the delica bead underneath that color B. Pull that through so that the dragon scale is in front of the dagger. Next, I'm going to go down the color B. This one is the same one that we started from. Pass through that. I'm going to travel down the delica that is diagonal from the bead I'm coming out of. Then you're going to pick up the color B that's in front of the first dagger. But again, add a dragon scale, set, go through the delica bead in the front, like so it starts to cover up the dagger. Now because there's a lot of tension in my bees, I'm going to actually turn my thread through the front, and I'm going to use the size 15 in the very front row in order to get to where I need to be. Go up one size 15. Then finally through the first delica bead, next over, and from there you're going to work on the delicas in the first row instead of starting at the bees in the back. So you're going to add your dragon scale set and go through the bee bead in the back. This one is not going to have a dagger attached to it. So you'll go through that bee bead. So you tuck your needle underneath the dagger. Go through the delica that you started from. Move up the next size 15. Then through the next delica on the first row, and you'll repeat. 15, dragon scale 15, pull it down. Go through the color B. And that's going to be attached to a dagger. Slide underneath the dagger in order to get to the next bead that you want to come out of. Flip it over. Pass through the delica in the first row that we started from. Travel up through the next size 15 and then through the next delica, and repeat that all the way over until you meet the dragon scales on this side, and then we'll work on finishing off and adding the fringe. Alright, so you've got everything sorted. This is what your piece looks like. I have ended up where my thread is coming out of the bicone right here, the very first one next to the dragon scales. And to tie everything together, I'm going to add one 3mm bicone, pass through the next 3mm bicone. Then I'm going to set up for my fringy bits by passing through the size 15 that is next to the last bicone. So from there we are going to add a bicone, 2 15s, bicone, 2 15s until we have 5 sets. After our 2 15s, we're going to add a delica bead and our pearl bead. Going to flip the piece over, and we are going to snag the color B delica bead. That is after the one where we have attached our final bicone on the bezel itself. So you see a color bead there, you jump over to the next one. Pass that through. You're going to then pass back through the pearl bead and start making our way up and conforming its shape. Going to pass through the next delica. Add on 2 size 15s, pass through the next bicone, 2 15s through the next bicone, and so forth till you get up to the top bicone there. You want to make sure you keep your tension tight because things are going to be flopping around. Then when you are at the final bicone, you're just going to anchor it to a delica bead on the bezel. It doesn't quite matter which one, but I'm picking one that is in between 2 color Bs on the back row. So this is the middle row. Again, trying to keep your tension tight because this pearl wants to move, but we will begin to fix it in our repositioning and with our fringe. So you'll notice right now it just wants to flop around over on. It might turn to the right side, but we want to flip it over so that it curls around the pearl. And we're going to do a few things to make sure that it stays there. So I'm going to turn my thread around. I'm going to go up a delica in the very first row. Then I'm going to change direction by moving through the size 15 that's right next to it. This will also help cinch your tension. We are then going to move through the size 15s. I am jumping through 1 pair, 2 pairs, and finally 3 pairs. And I am coming out of the very front row. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold over my loop, pass through the second pair around that pearl, from right to left, if I'm holding it this way. Then we're going to pass back through that same bead that we started from to anchor it onto the bezel, and our pearl has curved in the right direction. If you have room in your 15, feel free to reinforce that once more. If not, feel free to join and continue onward. So now we're going to work downwards to our fringe bits. So I'm coming from the very first bead on the bezel on the right side. I'm going to pass right to left on that same 2 beads that we anchored to the bezel. Then I'm going to change direction and pass downward. I'm going to go through the size 15s and then through the bicone. I'm going to then move all the way down until I have reached the delica bead underneath the pearl. And from there we're going to start adding our fringy bits. So from that delica we're going to add an indeterminate number of beads depending on how long you want your tendril. A bicone, 3 seed beads, a dagger, 3 seed beads. And we are going to pass up all the way through until we reach the delica on top. Then we are going to pass through the delica and through 2 size 15s. Then I'm going to change direction by passing through the next column of size 15s, back through the delica, and from there you can add another tendril. Now you can add as many tendrils that you want using this technique. I got about 5 tendrils before I started getting too much tension over here where the delica and the size 15s are. So when I made this, I started with 5 and I was like, this isn't very full enough for me, so I wanted to add more. And I didn't want to break my beads here because that would make me cry. So what I did is after I made my next tendril, I just passed through the pearl bead. I went through the delica that is anchoring that pearl bead. Then I went back through that pearl bead. And from there, I can add more fringy bits. So this kind of helped until I had too much pressure on the delica back here. I managed to get 9 tendrils after doing that technique. So, add as many tentacles as you want, and all that's left is to do the bail. So when it comes to the bail, there's not a whole lot you can do, because of all of this weird floppy spiky bits that kind of gets in the way. So I did a really simple stitch here. I picked out a delica bead that is on the backmost row, and I kind of just let go of my piece, let it hang by a thread, literally, and determine how the piece falls and how I wanted it to hang. So I generally like to have the pearl on as far of a side as possible because I like the movement, the way it goes woo woo. So that's kind of how I set it up. You can put it wherever you like. But all I did was add a bunch of seed beads. You could do size 15s or you can do delicas. I passed back through that same delica that I'm coming out of to make a picot kind of deal. reinforced that, and then hung a jump ring onto it and called it good. And with that, you will have finished your piece. It's not too complicated, but it is kind of fiddly and chaotic. But once you get the hang of it, you should be able to use these techniques in other beats too. If you figure out a different, more elegant way of making a bail on these, please feel free to let me know in the comments or in our Discord group. I would like to see what you've come up with. But this is what I have for you. I hope you enjoyed. I think you will, because I know a lot of people were looking for things to do with dragon scales. So this is what I created using the beads that I got from Scarabeads. Feel free to check them out down below. I've got a coupon code for y'all, so you can save some cash while you're getting your supplies. I love this place a lot. This is generally if I want something fancy and special. I go there because they have a lot of unique finishes, like these etches with gold flecks on them I really love. So I highly encourage you to check them out. And with all that being said, be sure to like up this video and subscribe if you want to see more bullshit from me. All of my social media links are down below if you want to come check me out and say hello. And once again, be sure to join us on our Discord group where you can ask questions about beady things, get inspiration and ideas, and see what other folks are doing, share pictures of your pets, look at other people's pets, and talk about life in itself. So there is a link down below to the Discord group for you to join up. And then thank you to all of my patrons over on Patreon. You all are awesome, and I really appreciate each and every one of you for helping me support the channel and just being there and interacting. I really love hearing from y'all. And if you would like to be a patron and get exclusive tutorials once per month that I do not post on YouTube, feel free to check out my Patreon page down below, patreon.com/odins.musings. Or if you don't feel like signing up for a new website, I also have YouTube memberships active. You can check out the join button over in the description as well, next to the title. Feel free, it's got the same exact rewards as Patreon, so you're not missing out on anything. So thank you all so much for joining me, and of course, if there's anything I need to be trying out right now, feel free to let me know down below, and I will see you next time.